So how did you become a musician?
Well, I learned through my friend John Gialli, who ended up, being he's my best friend, and when I was in grade school, and he ended up being the guitar player in 441, and his brother's a drummer, and they were both into music. When I first met him, like I was 9 or 10 years old, and they were both musicians and had albums, and that really how I got started. And then my mom bought me my first guitar, which I still have, and used that guitar for all the albums that we did, all the work we did for 441. I did all those albums with that guitar my mom bought me. So yeah, I started that way, and I learned from them, and then on my own. And
Excellent.
I didn't have a song. I've always been a songwriter. I still write songs.
Great.
So yeah,
So how did 441 originally form?
it was basically through friendship. I'm still friends with John and Steve Gialli, who you'll see on the albums, with John on guitar, Steve on drums, and then Glenn, met him in like junior high, and we all were friends, and all musicians, and we'd play during the summers. We'd play, make form bands and play songs and play at church or other places like that. So that's how we started. And
And when you,
I'm still friends with Glenn and Steve and Joe. They're some of my best friends like in the world. So I'm really fortunate. Yeah.
now you say you met him in junior high. Which city were you in that you
We
were?
all, yeah, we grew up in Arcadia, which is near Pasadena, kind of, about 20 minutes from downtown Los Angeles.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what are the names of the other musicians in the band and the instruments that they played?
So John Gialli, which is Jiali, he played electric guitar. Glenn Holland, he played bass, and then Steve Gialli, John's older brother, played drums.
Okay. Who wrote the songs?
It was mostly me and Glenn Holland, but we collaborated, with the whole band. But we were the main songwriters.
Okay. How many albums did the band make?
So we made 4 albums. The first 2 were the most popular, and got record play, and that really catapulted us. We ended up playing together for 5 years because we got a lot of radio play, and a lot of album sales from that. And then we did a Sacrifice album in like 1989, and then we did a live album about I think it was like 15 years ago. We had a live album.
Wow.
Yeah.
On the first album, 441, what was your favorite song? And if for the listeners, I can go ahead and read just the name of all the songs. And I'm curious which one's your favorite. So on 441, there was Judgment Game, Love's Irony, Fish on the Car, Mom and Dad, Show Me, Breakout, In His Presence, and Looking at You. Which one's your favorite of that group?
I If I had to pick one, I'd have to say In His Presence.
Oh, that was
Uh,
a good
but
one.
but I also like Breakout because that ended up being the song that it went to #1 on a local radio station, and it
Really?
was released as a single, and that basically, the phone was ringing off the hook when it was played on a local radio station in Orange County called KYMS, and I think it was #1 for weeks. I can't remember how many weeks. It was over a year.
Really?
And yeah, and that's why we ended up getting a lot of opportunities to play. People invited us, and then we also got to do another album, and we traveled to we ended up getting invited to festivals at Cornerstone and stuff like that. But
Wow.
that album that song Breakout was pretty special. It was pretty important.
But I liked Mom and Dad myself. I was kind of
Yeah.
my own. I had a great set of parents, and that was sort of the lyrics to how I felt about my parents.
Oh yeah. So I was gonna I was trying to pick. It's really hard to pick because Mom and Dad is also one of my favorites. I wrote that song. It was a tribute to my mom and dad. And when we did this first album, I go like, I'm gonna write a song about my mom and dad, you know, and I wanted it to be just sincere and heartfelt. And I wanted them to know what I felt, So and it was a good song. I mean, it didn't get a lot of radio play, but that's definitely one of my favorites too. It's personal for me.
Right, right. Well, you
I'm
made it
glad
personal.
glad you liked it.
Yeah, you made it personal for everyone, as it was personal for me as well.
Good, that's good.
On the album Morning into Dancing, and released in 1986, I'll go ahead and list the 9 songs. We got Morning into Dancing, In the Night, Is It Enough, In His Presence, Take Their Toll, New Land, On the Run, Jordan, and Say It Right. what would be your favorite song of all those or favorites?
Yeah, I'd say "Morning to Dancing," which ended up going to number 2 on national charts, and was like one of the we'd always end our concerts or most of them with that very popular song.
Right.
Fun, a lot of fun to play. It was based on the Psalm verse in Psalm 30. A bunch of the words are from Psalm chapter 30. And
Right.
the bass player Glenn Holland was the one who came up with the original concept for it. And I always like to give him credit because I think without him, it wouldn't have happened. He wrote a lot of the parts to it and whatnot. So yeah, but I also really love "Is It Enough." That's a very personal song. I wrote that whole song. I did the drum parts. I did everything for it, and I just felt it expressed, what it's like to try to have faith. you know, the difficulties of faith, and it's not always easy.
Right.
Um,
What what's the story with Jordan?
That's my nephew. It's my sister's son, her only kid, and we, because of some trouble my sister was in, myself, my mom and dad, and others in my family ended up taking care of him a lot. And so I was, in the band and in my early 20s, and I would take care of him. I'd have him at my apartment or the house that I rented with John Gielli. He would spend the night, and so I was basically an uncle, and I had a lot of responsibilities, to take care of him.
Right.
And I just remember I wrote that song because we were like at a park or doing something, flying a kite or something like that. And I realized, and I felt like, man, this is like a lot of, I'm taking all this time out to, hang out with him. And it was like being a parent, and I felt like, man, this is like a waste of time. That's what I'm doing. But then as I'm sitting and I'm realizing this is exactly what I should be doing, exactly what God wants me to do, just hanging out with him, just having fun.
Right.
And so the whole idea of the song was that's kind of like how God sees us, is just he just wants to be with us. So that's what that song is. I just wanted to be with him. Or hold hands, hang out together.
Well, that's great. Well, did the band eventually end, and why did it end?
Yes, it actually did. We made a decision in 1989, 1990. We had a concert at Knott's Berry Farm, which we'd played a lot, and we decided that was going to be our last concert. Just had a lot of different reasons why. So I don't want to get into too complicated, but we all had, gone to college, and we were like starting careers at the time, and some of us getting married, and it just wasn't a lifestyle that we felt it was working, would work for us. So we basically made a decision. It was really just a decision. There were other issues though, like the guy who was our record producer, the guy who funded all the albums, had financial problems, so it really hurt him, and it meant we weren't getting income. So that was another reason. And there's other reasons too, but those are probably the two most important ones.
Okay, makes sense. What
Yeah.
do you think of contemporary Christian music today?
I don't I read that question. I don't listen to a lot of it. Other than in church, I like to hear the new worship songs. So I like Hillsong, and I've led worship before. I really like Hillsong a lot. I like Chris Tomlin. I saw Matt Redman in concert a few years ago, and I thought he was amazing. Uh, but I don't really follow the radio stuff. I don't really know much about it. Yeah. Yeah, I just met with a friend of mine who's a pastor here in Orange County, and I knew him. We were friends in the 1980s, and he said that same thing. He just feels like it was unique. It was kind of a unique time, and it was because all the bands, and I knew all these guys personally. I knew Adam Again, Undercover, Altar Boys. I knew Mike Knott and Lifesavers. I knew all those guys, Lifters, and they all wanted to do something different because the same issue. The Christian music at the time was very, very similar. Everything was similar, and that's the way the industry wanted it. They didn't want to do anything too. They wanted to sort of stay safe. So we really wanted to write sort of music that we would like to listen to, and all those bands are like that. So it's kind of unique that way at that time.
Right.
It does not happening now.
Did you feel like a pioneer starting a new generation of music back then?
I read that question, and no, I didn't. But uh, because I grew up in Southern California, going to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. I became a Christian, when I was like 15 years old, and I went to dozens of bands, Larry Norman, Randy Stonehill, Love Song, The Way, just all these, which were great bands. I mean, they were really good music and songwriters, and that inspired me. And then that's why I did what I did. So I just felt like I was a part of what they did. Is the way I saw it. But I guess you're right, because that it definitely was a unique, it was a unique time in terms of the style of music, and it was a youth movement. You know, it really was a, and the whole, to me it seemed like the Holy Spirit was moving in that way at that time. So I
Yeah.
guess it kind of was. I always felt like it was just a part of the Jesus movement that I, knew when I was younger.
The first generation of this Jesus movement was the very well done movie Jesus Revolution.
Yeah, I love that
It's
movie.
my yeah, it's my opinion. The second generation is the Randy Ziegler Saturday Night Concerts at Calvary,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that
So
was
that,
for yeah, that was like a whole decade of the 1980s, and then
yeah,
at the very end of that decade starts the third movement, which is the Harvest Crusades, the third wave,
yeah,
the third
yeah, yeah,
generation.
yeah.
But
No, I think you're right. That's a good perspective. I think you're right.
yeah, I don't think the Harvest Crusades would be as popular as they are, and they're very popular for all the right reasons, if it wasn't for that transitionary second wave, which is 441, Undercover, Lifesavers, Altar Boys. I mean, the list is wonderful, and
It did have a longevity,
right,
and it was connected, of course, to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, in a big way. Which is how what I did. I went, like every Saturday night. I saw so many bands, and it was good music. And then the
right,
leadership was great. And so
yep,
we got to know Randy personally. I mean, that's how we ended up getting our first album contract, was because Randy, we sent tapes. We literally made cassette tapes in studio that our bass player had built, and he could make multiple. He made multiple copies of cassette tapes, and one of them went to Randy Ziegler, and he ended up calling us in. We literally went down to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and we went into the sanctuary. We just sat down with him, and that's how it started. And then he
wow,
introduced us. Yeah, he introduced us to Harry Barnes, who had a record label, and Harry signed us that like the next day.
wow.
And then we recorded our first album with Doug Doyle down in Costa Mesa, and then the album just took off. Literally, as soon as the single got released, the album just took off.
Yeah, you're talking about the 1984 first release of the first
Yeah,
album.
yeah, yeah. That was
Yeah.
how that happened. It was very, very unusual because it happened really fast.
So, were you ever interviewed for the documentary film Us Kids, an Alternative Music Revolution? It's about the bands of the early 1980s.
Yeah, yeah. I met with John Smeby and Todd, I think Ziller,
Oh, good.
last year, and then John lives here in Orange County. I still live in Orange County, and John lives down in Dana Point. So I meet with him every once in a while. But yeah,
Oh,
yeah, we're giving him all kinds of photographs, and we have film, and we have all kinds of paraphernalia that we sent him.
yeah, I can hardly wait for that movie to get out. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They're doing a good job, uh, and they really are. They're they understand all the bands. They're the right guys to do it
Right.
for sure.
During your time as 441, did you ever connect with any other bands, like do any concerts with anybody else?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing actually when you did that question. I just made a list, and we played with everybody. We played with Altar Boys, Undercover, Adam. We played with Adam again a lot, Lifesavers, Crumbacher, and a whole host of other ones. I couldn't remember all the names of all the other bands. We played with
Right.
a lot of bands. Yeah, yeah, lots. And sometimes they would fill in. So our drummer Steve had a full-time job. He actually graduated from college and was working. So sometimes he couldn't make it. So Gary Olson from Undercover played with us one time, and
Wow.
Common Bond's another band we played with, and the drummer from that band played with us.
Yeah.
Filled in for us. Yeah, yeah, it was fun. We'd open up for bands, or they'd open up for us, and I had a great time. I really got along with everybody. Had a really good time. It was a lot of fun.
But I would say that the two largest polls would be Undercover and 441 in
Yeah.
that early 1980s, as far as the number of people coming to Calvary, or the number
Oh
of
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, the number of friends I could stuff in my truck would always tap out for those two bands in particular.
Wow, that's
Just
cool.
yeah, it was.
That's
Oh, it
cool.
was. Those were good times.
Yeah,
I'm
we
so
were really we had a really good relationship with Randy Ziegler. He loved us a lot, and he would invite me to come play acoustic guitar during the week. He had a Bible study. I don't know if you remember, there was a couple of guys who did Bible studies, and he was one of them. And those were huge. Those Bible studies would have like 500 kids in it. It was amazing. So I'd go hang out with him, and yeah, I got to be good friends with Randy.
Right. So do you think it's safe to say that he helped form 441?
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He's the one who somehow he got our the kids are all playing here in the park. So he's the one who got our cassette tape that was our demo, and he's the one who called us. We literally met him. He called us. We drove down to Costa Mesa. We sat in the sanctuary and we met Randy one on
Wow.
one. He interviewed us and basically was deciding what to do. And then he introduced us to Harry Barnes. And it happened so fast after that. It was very fast. Harry already had the money. He was looking for a band to start his label with, and he ended up starting with us. So
Wow.
yeah, and I'm still friends with Harry too. I still do stuff with him and keep in touch with him.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what was your most favorite venue to play?
Yeah, I mean Calvary Chapel. I would say Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, because that's where because I had gone to see bands for years there, like when I was a kid, and I idolized all those guys, and so the con. Oh, by the way, we played with Benny Hester too. Our first concert at Calvary
Right.
Costa Mesa, we opened up for Benny Hester, and I love Benny Hester. I went and saw him dozens of times,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it was like a dream. The just going to play at Calvary Chapel was all I wanted to do. I didn't care about. I mean, I wanted an album and stuff, but I didn't really care what happened after that. It's like as soon as that happened, I was like, we did it. I mean, we're at Calvary Chapel, playing on the stage. This is like Chuck Smith's church, and we're playing with Benny Hester. So that was like the peak. But then, of course, I mean, we had a lot of success after that, so things changed. But I loved
Yeah.
Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and it was always a great, huge crowd. Great. Randy was always the one who was, there, introducing and speaking and stuff, and
Yeah.
it was awesome. He was definitely. I think it was the Holy Spirit. I think God gave him talent, and he was a really good communicator, really good, and
Right.
very sharp, man. The guy was smart, and but he was to hold out to basically tell people, about God, and I felt really fortunate, that was our main connection, and
Right.
that's why that's. I thought about a lot of different places we played because we played all over the country, but I would say I'd have to pick Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, because it's where I went when I was a kid. It really was where it formed my faith really formed me, and then getting to be involved in the ministry there was a dream. It was amazing.
So what are you doing? What are you doing now?
Well, I mean, back then when I was in the band, I was in school. All of us were in school. So I if you can believe this, I went to school and I got a degree as a geologist,
Hmm.
and I ended up getting my master's degree. I'm licensed in the state of California as a geologist, and I've worked in basically like the engineering industry for my whole
Okay.
career. It's what I still do, and which I love. I'm very lucky. It's a great it's a great field for me, and it's provided for me and my family. I mean, my wife and I have brought up 4 kids, and I now I have two married and one who has a child. So I have a grandchild, 2-year-old grandchild,
Right.
and yeah, so it's been a blessing. Like God gave me some great things. I'm very thankful for.
You did that. Are you all in the same? Is your whole family like all together in maybe Orange County or something?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just in the last 2 years, actually maybe 3 or 4 years, my 2 oldest kids got married, and to people from out of Orange County. But they both decided to live here, so they both bought homes here in Orange County, and then they just had the grandchild 2 years ago here. So yeah, my whole family's here,
Oh, that's
and it's pretty cool, man. We did not expect it, because like my son's wife is from Sacramento. It's a lot more affordable to live in Sacramento, and she has a big family there. But they ended up getting jobs here in Orange County, so they live 15 minutes away, and same with my daughter and her husband.
well,
So
that's
yeah,
great.
it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's great.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you for the interview, John. This was
yeah. No,
for me.
I
This is
appreciate your interest. Yeah, it's cool to be reconnecting with a lot of people, and seeing people like you who are sort of documenting stuff. It's great.
yeah, right. It's nice seeing your face, Jim. So familiar with the way you look that it's just nice seeing a familiar face.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, anytime. If you need anything, let me know.
Okay, thank you,
All
John.
right, Bob. Thank you, Bob. It was
Okay,
good to talk to you.
it
Talk
was
to you
my
later.
pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.